Good morning. Looks like everyone is in, and we just, at least one person popped out, so I apologize, but we'll give him just a minute here to see if that was an accident or if they need back in. I guess while we're waiting, I'll do a little bit of housekeeping. It is just me this morning, so I will be monitoring the chat window and the question window. I'll try to keep all the questions unless I see something come up that's incredibly pertinent to whatever screen we're on. I'll address it then, but otherwise I'm just going to try to hold those for the end. It's a short presentation. I'm going to try to keep it to about 20-25 minutes, and then at that point answer questions that you guys may have had. Also, I will provide my email at the end. If you have any questions, I'll absolutely answer all emails. And just one other kind of difference here in other programs. This is not a slideshow, so there won't be slides available. It's a Prezi presentation, so it's kind of dynamic. It's all one screen. That will be available, though. I'm using the free version, so it's public domain, so it'll be out there almost like a YouTube video, and I'd be more than happy to provide links for that if anybody needs it. You should have had on the very first screen or in the emails that were sent a phone number to call if you're having any difficulty hearing me. I know in a few cases some of the sound wasn't working the first time we tried it, but that was I only have one area that has any kind of background sound. So I don't see any questions to start out. Looks like everybody's in there and good to go. You are muted. One extra thing we're kind of experimenting with on the sound. Sometimes it sounds like it can cut in and out if you're on a speakerphone. So at your end, since you're muted anyway, go ahead and mute your speakerphone. And I know I have you muted, but if you don't have the speakerphone at your end muted, sometimes it'll pick up noises at your end and you'll think we're cutting in and out when actually it's just your phone waiting on sound. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to Managed Services 101. And hopefully you got this in your brochure or you saw this in your email. This really is a difference in the way businesses are approaching their technology. I can't think of an example of a business that doesn't use technology in some way. So this part's applicable to everyone. As I'll address here in a few minutes, though, managed services is not necessarily applicable to everyone. That's just to make sure you're awake. Anyone that's a certain age will probably recognize that from movies. I know in my area, at least in my region, that was played before every single one. Maybe I was just always in general cinemas, I'm not sure. But I try to include something to make sure everybody's ready to go. Right now, most people, and if you're listening to this, chances are you're not on managed services, unless I guess a few people said they may attend just to see if what they're doing and being provided is actually managed services. Most people are on what's called a break fix and or a staff augmentation. And basically that means you wait till something breaks, call your IT person or group, they come out and fix it. Staff augmentation just refers to maybe you have one person that's full-time, or maybe you have somebody on staff that's just kind of become the IT expert and people go to them first, and if they can't take care of it or solve it, then you call your IT person or group and they come in. And we still have a lot of clients that are on one or both of these techniques for how they approach and tackle their IT. So what exactly am I calling managed services? And believe it or not, that this is different for depending on who you call in. If we were to call in 5 different MSP providers, and I'll refer to managed services as that a lot through here just out of habit. If we called in 5 different ones to give us a quote, we could very easily end up with 5 different quotes. Nothing wrong with that. We just want to make sure you understand exactly what you're getting, and hopefully after this, even though this is a short presentation, you'll at least have some general idea of what to ask before you even have anybody come out and talk to you or get on the phone. At the very least, managed services is monitoring. I don't really call this managed services. I know some people do, so I've included it here. But all this would be is some agents installed on your server, possibly some workstations, and it monitors for alerts. When those alerts are kicked, you get them. So like you notice here, you're doing most of the work, or at least deciding what to do. And very important here, you're deciding whether those alerts need to be addressed. Part of the problem, especially when you get to servers, is you get a lot of things kicked to you that don't necessarily need a response. They're doing it just as kind of a safety. On the other end of the spectrum, fully managed services includes monitoring, obviously, but on top of that, some analysis and some planning. And I'll go into some details here as exactly what is being monitored, analyzed, and planned for. But the fourth thing that's usually included with managed services, and it's a big plus both to you and to the provider, is it's good for budgeting. Most likely you have a set monthly payment. Sometimes it can fluctuate, but for the most part it's static. So you know every month, here is what I'm paying for my IT support. Some of the details here are some of the things that are monitored and analyzed. And the better the, or maybe I shouldn't say better, the more thorough the IT provider, the more thorough the analysis. So it's very easy to throw an agent on a server and some workstations to kick those alerts. Like I said, it's another thing to know how to analyze those and know which things you actually need to respond to and which things are just kind of noise. I won't go through all these, but just a couple really interesting ones. Hard drive space sounds really, really basic. It's not. If I were to look at your server right now, or servers, I could say, okay, yeah, you're at 60% capacity on your main hard drives or your main array. That sounds like, oh, great, we're barely over half. But the problem is, if you don't have somebody looking at this on a regular interval, you don't know maybe that the week before you were only at 20%. And the week before that, you were at 19%, and the year before that, 19%. So something happened in that week that jumped you up to 60%. So just getting an alert by itself or seeing it in a log, you have to be able to interpret it. Obviously, that's where experience comes in and people that do this all the time. Backups are obviously another huge thing you want to have somebody really on top of. So those are the two ends of managed services. And now the very next question you need to ask is, are you a fit for managed services? We are a managed services provider. We also do plenty of break fix. And I can tell you not everyone is a fit for managed services. And at the very end of this, if time allows, I'll go into a few examples of some people that aren't. But it's easier to talk about the people that are. The vast majority of people, yes, that you can benefit from it. So here are some things to ask. Do you sleep well? And the reason we ask that is hopefully you're not somebody that has blinders on or can just tune out problems, but things like backups that keep people awake, business owners especially. Are my backups actually working? If I had to restore tomorrow fully, could I? And then what about my preventative stuff? Ransomware is all over the news these days. Am I doing everything I can, or is our company doing everything they can to avoid getting hit with this? Is our antivirus up to date? Is our anti-malware up to date? Are our security patches up to date? Things like that. Those will keep a business owner or can up late at night. I actually knew one guy that every night where if he would hear a storm and get woken up, he would not be able to go back to sleep because he was always asking himself, what's going to happen if tomorrow morning I go in and that server doesn't come back up? It ended up his building lost power all the time. So that's mainly confidence in backups at that point. And the other question to ask is your business efficient? And by efficient, don't base your answer to this by asking the question or stating, well, nothing's broken right now or no one's complaining. That doesn't mean you're running efficiently. One of the things we kind of like to point out to people is something termed hidden downtime. And this gets interesting. And originally I had all these numbers built into this presentation, but that got pretty boring pretty fast. I can provide those, some samples for salaries in our area and actual cost of this, but in a nutshell, waiting for applications to load sounds like a really small thing. It's actually not. When you start adding up those few minutes here and there by 8 hours, multiplied by 5 days, multiplied by 30 days in a month, and so on, it adds up to real money, let alone frustration for the user. Slow web pages, that's getting more and more prevalent. Our internet is slow. Things like that that actually can hurt your efficiency, but you don't feel like you're broken. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, enough about you. Here are some questions that you need to ask a provider. And this is kind of one of the things I mentioned on the brochure here. We're going to give 6 things that you absolutely should ask. If they can't answer these or at least address them in a way that makes you feel comfortable, then pass and move on to the next person. Number 1, what's their staff experience like? And going with someone for managed services, this should absolutely not be a single person. That's just not possible to really do a good job that way. This should be a group of people, and they should be kind of spread out. They shouldn't all have their specialties all in one area or all in one vertical. Here's another interesting one, and I think quite a few managed service providers have caught on to this and are doing it now, and that's a good thing, is will I have a lead engineer? Nothing drives business people crazier than having a different technician show up every time they have an issue. And they're relearning your network and relearning you and your staff. That can get very, very frustrating. So will I have a lead engineer? And that does not go against number 1 on the staff experience. Even though you have a lead engineer, keep in mind that lead engineer is leaning on people themselves when they get back to the office and kicking ideas around and leaning on expertise that they may or may not have. How do I get support? This kind of sounds like a dumb one, but you need to ask it because some people are surprised. Everything looks great. They sign up, and then they're given an email address, and the people say, "That's how you get a hold of us. You send us an email. It generates a ticket. You'll get an auto response, and that lets you know we got it." And for some business owners, that is fine. That's plenty. So I'm not knocking that necessarily. You just need to be fully aware going in if that's your only available support. Hopefully you have some emergency number you can call as well. But again, ask this ahead of time. It's not a good thing to be surprised with late at night. Do they standardize? This is another really interesting one. It's not a must. But I found as I talk to more and more managed services providers, and I go to a few conferences here and there and around the country and talk to people, the most successful ones are the ones that have already standardized or are starting to. And by that I mean when they come in and look at your system, you may be on backup exec and using tapes for your backup system. And they may recommend to you or say, this is fine, but as soon as that license expires, we want to move you to what we use for backup. And it sounds like at first it's just kind of a money grab. And maybe for some people it is. In a lot of cases, though, it makes perfect sense for the provider, and it's going to make sense for you, because what that means is they don't have to be experts in 20 different products. That makes them less efficient. And that makes them less likely to be able to help you in a hurry and to look ahead and to help you plan for things. Backups are just one example. Antivirus, anti-spyware, we deal with that all the time. There are probably 13, 14 different products out there you could name just off the top of your head, 4 or 5 of which you probably see every day now that ransomware is such a big deal. Those ads pop up all over the place. No one can be an expert in all of those. And I don't think you'd want someone that's having their people spend all that time becoming an expert on 10 different products. You want someone that knows maybe 2, 3 really well. And most MSPs will work with you. They won't have you switch right away, although I have found some that are very, very strict. And when they come in, they say, nope, this is the backup you move to. This is the antivirus. Otherwise, we won't do anything for you. They're obviously in really big markets. They can afford to do that. Do you provide a virtual CIO, Chief Information Officer? Again, this is something that I think quite a few are actually doing. How well they do it, that may be another matter. But your virtual CIO is typically a person other than your lead engineer. So it's someone that knows more of the business end and the technology piece. And they sit down with you on a regular basis. That could be once a year, once a quarter, twice a year. And they go through things that a CIO, if you had one, would go through with you. This is huge on the planning part. And I should throw in also, most managed service providers don't charge for this. If they do this outside of a managed services agreement, provide these virtual CIO services, then they will charge, and that's usually an hourly rate. And again, it depends on your area, on what that goes for. But believe me, if you get someone that does this well, it is worth 10 times whatever they charge for you. And in most cases, like the managed services agreement, it's included. So absolutely take advantage of that. The good managed services providers will kind of almost insist that someone on the management side and on the financial side, if that's applicable to you, would attend these meetings. And you can find out right away how valuable they are, because as you're going through those meetings, some managed services providers will tell me, sure, the business owner was there for the first 1 or 2 meetings, and then now they always seem like they're busy and can't attend. Well, that tells me they weren't getting anything out of it. So it's a huge deal. They don't have to be really long meetings. The lead engineer should also be there, but they sit down with you and plan on really critical things like replacement of laptops, workstations, servers, even other hardware. They let you know what your status is on any long-term projects you might have going. For budgeting, this is huge, and that's where most of our clients find the greatest benefit from this vCIO service, is in planning. Another thing, when Windows Server 2003 was getting ready to hit end of life, our break-fix customers, quite a few of them, especially the ones not on our email list, were caught by surprise. Our managed services clients, they all knew about this well ahead of time, had planned for it, and had implemented their solutions. And the last one here, sort of the last one, I throw an extra one in, but what does our contract not cover? Sometimes that's almost more important than the other ones. And typically for managed services, your contract will not cover projects. So if you look at it from the managed services provider perspective, they have to plan for things and they have to cover their cost. So they can't come in, or it's very difficult for them to come in and just do a total blank check. Hey, I'm going to charge you $100 a month, and it's just totally unlimited, even if you do a complete overhaul of your system. So a lot of times projects are excluded from that normal contract. You may still get discounted hours as far as that rate goes, but the actual work itself will be quoted probably as a project, and hopefully maybe even as a fixed fee. And the big thing here, as you're asking them all these things, is try to get a feel, because keep in mind, here's one thing that I'm always amazed that people will just kind of willy-nilly bring in technical support. These guys have the keys to the castle. So when you bring in somebody and they're given your admin credentials for your server, they hold your business in their hands. And how secure that is or not secure, all of that goes into trust. So as you're kind of interviewing people to find out if you're a fit for something and are they a fit for you, keep in mind this is a huge thing that you're getting into with these guys. And another one that always comes up, but it's very hard to answer, is cost. So how do people price these? And just like there are all kinds of managed services, there are also all kinds of pricing. Some will do it by devices plus hours, included hours for the month. And what that means is a lot of times they'll have a chart they may or may not share with you, but it'll say you have 2 servers, that's X amount of dollars. You have 14 workstations, that's X amount of dollars. You have 3 locations, that's X amount of dollars. Add it all up. And throw in, let's say, 5 hours a month that you're estimating you're going to use. Add that up, that's your cost. And let's update the computers up there. If anybody recognizes that one. You probably recognized the movie intro earlier also. That's a Commodore 64. Yeah, that looks a little better. So what happens when you have other devices though? Well, now it gets a little crowded because problems occur when you try to price by device, and all of a sudden now you have a tablet, a smartphone, cameras, and in that picture cameras almost seem like it's out of place, but if you think about auto collision repair, they have, I know several clients that have 4 or 5 different cameras that they have to have wirelessly connected and uploading all the time. So all of a sudden now those cameras have an IP address and need to be supported. So the number of devices has just gone crazy. So a lot of MSPs are starting to price by user. And of course, I kind of mentioned before, this one you're going to see the least of, and the reason you're going to see the least of it is it's very difficult to price. And I don't mean from your standpoint, but from our standpoint as a provider. You really, really have to know a client and know some history to have a really good feel for how many hours they're going to need of support every month before you can just throw out the unlimited. What some people do is they just price that so high that no one ever goes for it. And like I mentioned in a previous slide, what about projects? Are projects included? Are they not included? And as importantly, what's considered a project? If I get a new workstation for a user and replace an old one, is that a project? Hopefully not. What if I do 5 workstations? Yeah, that may be a project. These are things that need to get ironed out ahead of time, not during the course of a contract. And some examples. Here's some actual math here. So here's an example of a company. I picked a small one on purpose. They have a single server. They have 5 computers and 8 users. Each of those users has a smartphone and a tablet. So here are 3 different ways it could be priced, all for the same setup at the top. If you're pricing it device plus hours, and then these are pretty typical prices, a server, usually right around $150 a month to manage that. 5 workstations being managed at $20. And by the way, not everyone requires all of these to be included when you price by device. We have plenty of clients that just have the server under maintenance. They don't do their workstations, so I don't want to mislead you on that. These are not all a must, but this is if you were to go ahead and cover everything. The 8 smartphones at around 10 a piece, the 8 tablets at $10 a piece, and then these guys happen to be in an area where their hours at 5, maybe that's a discount, maybe that's not. That's a small number of hours, so that may not be a discount at $140 an hour. So their monthly bill is $11.10. And they know pretty much, as long as they don't go over that 5 hours, that they're going to be about $11.10 every month, and that covers them, which is really, really nice. The other thing that's nice is you're cutting down on the surprises, the gotchas. If you go back to that screen with the little baby sleeping, you can sleep a lot better knowing that somebody is looking, planning, analyzing ahead of time so you don't have those restless nights. Over to the right there, if they were due to price the same thing as by user plus those same 5 hours, definitely more entries here. I used $80. That seems to be a pretty common one for users. The nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about devices. Do they all have smartphones? Do they all have tablets? Whatever. Doesn't matter. It's priced by user. Still have the 5 hours. It's a little bit more expensive, $13.40, but everybody's covered. And of course, if you want to go crazy down there with the unlimited, and this number is based on a spreadsheet that I have that I won't bore you with, but I didn't just make up the number. It came out of nowhere, but you can see it's quite a bit higher. And the reason it's quite a bit higher is the provider has to cover themselves. Because what happens if all of a sudden they take you on as a client and you're using 15 to 20 hours a month? You didn't estimate well, or they didn't estimate well what your needs were. May not be either party's fault, but again, like I said, it really helps when you're going to go unlimited if you have some kind of history that shows what kind of support you're going to need. The other advantage built into managed services is you should need less support than you do on the break-fix side. when you're a break-fix company, you may go a month or 2 or 3 without really needing any kind of great support, but when it hits, it really hits. And then that's when you get whacked for a lot. So hopefully that makes sense. That's just 3 examples. Most of the questions I get do center around pricing, and this is just 3 ways. You may have people that price it by device and hours. They just don't share that with you. They're actually calculating using that, and that gives them a pretty good number because they know a person that with 1 server, 5 computers, 8 users with those devices typically uses about 5 hours a month, and to put their agent on all those devices costs them X, and so at 1110 they're pretty well covered. So while I have this price sheet up too, here's another really nice thing to get ironed out ahead of time as you're kind of negotiating or interviewing is how do these change? What happens if you need another server? And what if that server is virtual? Does that make it any different in the pricing? What if you add a person? What if you lose a person? Does this get adjusted? In our case, we adjust quarterly, although we can adjust monthly as well, but I'm guessing most managed services providers have that built in somewhere. You just need to ask where it is. It doesn't always show up on that contract. Okay, let's say you decide though that you're going to go with the in-house person. That could be a part-time or a full-time person. So this is just kind of a funny description, but it really is applicable. What kind of person would you have to get, or that you'd look for, that could compete with somebody that offers managed services? And if you were to actually post that job description, it would have to include some things like this: no vacation, no sick days, because remember, if you have a group of people, you've always got somebody covering you. You have a single person, they're going to have vacation. They're going to have some sick days. By the way, we want you to have multiple certifications, and I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to pay for the training. I don't want to pay for you to go take the tests, especially a second time and a third if you don't pass the first time, let's say. But I really do want you to have those Microsoft certifications, maybe Cisco certifications, things like that. Very important. And 30 plus years of experience, but I want to pay you as if you're brand new. Those are kind of some of the things you're comparing it to when you compare to managed services. And the 30 plus years experience, by the way, I figured, calculated that based on about a 5 or 6 person IT group. That's pretty typical. You'll have some very experienced people, some younger people, but together and across the board, they're going to have 30 plus years easily, and across all kinds of verticals, which is another big plus. Well, I am right at the end. That is our last slide. I didn't see any questions pop up during the presentation. I know I go kind of fast anyway, so you may not have had a chance to. No hands were raised or anything. But I just wanted to say thanks and provide you with my email. And absolutely shoot me any follow-up questions you have. Say, hey, Pete, you shot through the pricing pretty quick. What do you think about this? Or do you have any thoughts on that? Be more than happy to give you my feedback and point you in a certain direction if there are any other resources that I know about. And then also I wanted to let you know that you may be getting some stuff, some information shortly on another webinar we have coming up, which is on ransomware. And that one I'm sure we'll get a big turnout for because that's all over the news, as I kind of mentioned earlier. So again, I appreciate your participation and look forward to any emails. Thank you.